This morning, I was having a think about an experience I had the other day at the gym. I had this class, this flexibility class, and I was with other people in the class, and we were kind of vibing with these exercises, trying to understand what a kip is, which is a certain swing that you do with your hands sort of hanging from the pull-up bar. You kind of flex out your body and flex it back. And when you don't have the sort of muscle memory of what a kip is, it's very awkward. And also it requires like forearm strength, it requires ab strength, and it requires pretty much these kind of strengths. And so the way you kind of do these kips, for example, is you will stand on a box, you will have one leg hovering and one leg on the box. You'll have your hands on the bar and you'll swing and you'll try to arch your back when you're forward and your legs are back, and you try to cave your back in when you're going back. So what was interesting about this was at the same time this was happening, I found myself in a situation where, okay, there's like different people in the class. A couple of them are girls, fewer guys. One of them, the girls that was in the class, I found attractive. And this is not an uncommon occurrence, but I noticed that something different happened that day. And this is what brings me to what I want to touch on today, which is what an inner child is. It's just like a small exploration of what do we mean when we say the phrase or the word or the term inner child. Usually, if I know myself, definitely one of the things that happens when I'm in this space with someone I find attractive, no matter if I'm actually appearing calm or I actually am calm, ultimately speaking, some part inside me freaks out because I'm uncomfortable in that space. And I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. And I'm working on it. And there's a whole series that can be done on situations that have triggered that, situations that have contributed to that, the history of that. It's its own storyline. In this case, I just wanted to note something interesting that happened. This attractive person that appears in everyday life, in everybody's life, it triggered the thing in me that freaks out a little bit, like a pinch. And it was like, okay, this is the situation right now, but I'm going to focus on the class. And, right. So we started doing these kips, and I also had a friend that was with me who was doing the kips with me. And there was this moment of like, okay, I'm sort of figuring it out. My kips look really awkward still, but I've got some vibe going. Got some momentum going and understanding the muscle mind connection. And me and my friend were figuring this out. And, he's giving this attractive person some input. And sort of naturally, I'm like, just do it like this. You just hop off and swing in a certain way. And you use the box to help. You keep your foot on the box, this kind of thing. And what I noticed afterwards, somewhat during, but mostly afterwards, was I wasn't in this usual space of, oh, I need to try to impress this person, or I need to try to make myself seem something extra. I was just having fun doing kips and sharing this information and sharing this experience with people around me. This attractive person happened to be nearby. And yes, my mind registered it when I was like giving these tips and communicating with this person, but it wasn't like a priority. It wasn't something I was fixated on because there was this activity that we were all doing together that was fun, that was good for us, that required, that was challenging, that needed us to think. And really, that's all just a way to say this playful side came out of me that isn't actually labeling any of these things. Like, okay, the instructor said, these are the things that you need to do. This is how to do a kip. This is the box that you need to use. Fine, I registered those things. But when we started doing these activities, I was just flowing. I'm sure a lot of people here know the feeling of flow. When you're not really super aware of what's happening. You're very much in the moment, but you can't really remember, those kind of moments. You can't really remember the specific every step detail because you were so immersed, so involved. Time passes differently. And I think there's different qualities to that state of flow, which could be addressed as well in a different podcast episode. But what I want to fixate on this time is this sense of non-labeling. Yes, a part of my mind was like, okay, this is labeling this as an attractive person, but it was so far back. Most of my awareness was play, have fun. And that was really interesting. This idea that there, first of all, are in the back of our minds subconsciously, anytime we enter a new space, an office, a cafe, there are these labels for things, manager, colleague, barista, menu, that are extremely useful to maneuvering in these spaces. But sometimes these labels can actually hinder us, can actually hold us back. And I think that when they sort of become a kind of narrative in our heads and we are part of that narrative, like, oh, this person is attractive, and I usually, for example, freak out, as I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, I usually freak out in the space of attractive people. Then as soon as I enter any new situation, I'm quite likely, because of this mechanism that immediately puts labels on everything when you enter a room, I'm quite likely to just, what would you say, plaster on that narrative of, oh, this is the character who usually freaks out with an attractive person. So if I accept that label as much as I accept the label of this is a barista, I must order from them, this is a menu, I must select an item, or this is a manager, I must update them with my latest tasks, what have you. If I treat those things in the same way or the same degree of rigidity, then I'm basically allowing myself or engaging myself in a closed narrative. However, if I take a step back from those labels and play, like in that class that I mentioned, then a new story can form. Whatever might happen in that moment. What might happen in that moment is nothing can happen. One option is that no particular outcome comes out of it. There's an attractive person. There is a playfulness, as in there is a willingness to not enter into a situation with any what's the word? With any notions that you have from before. That's kind of what I mean. So there's that mindset of, okay, I'm just going to see what happens, or I'm just going to be playful, or I'm just going to focus on some particular task in this room and see what happens. That's one way. Another way is to actually step in the room, notice, okay, wait, hold on a second. I'm labeling. I'm living this story that I usually live, and try to take a step back from that. What can I engage with in this room, like this gymnastics activity, or recommending an item at a cafe, or simply having small talk with the barista, and then maybe that leads to something else with somebody else, and it leads to a state of flow. But it is this idea of stepping back from the labels and exploring other options. And this kind of, I would say, I hope that you've found some resonance with the thoughts that I've been having. But I would just also offer, I noticed something that I was wondering, why am I more open to this? Why did it feel so easy to be in that space when sometimes it's quite difficult, it's quite uncomfortable? And I think that one thing that came to mind was, a contributor might be the work that I've been doing to live more from internal validation that I had mentioned in episode 5. Less using food to resolve emotions. This kind of externalizing my things that I used to find difficult, and I'm doing them more internally. I'm just, okay, I'm sad. I'm angry. I can meditate. I can breathe. I can express in some artistic thing, painting, sketching, but I can't eat a cookie to feel better. I exercise to get energy in the morning instead of eating heaps of sugar, for example. These things, I suspect, have been sort of starting to slightly, I hesitate to say, rewire my brain in a way where I'm more okay with discomfort, at least enough to be able to do that thing that I had said a few moments ago of take a step back from that narrative that says, oh, you're uncomfortable in certain situations, and this is you, this is your character, this is the enemy, this is the obstacle, and then let that play out. Take a step back from that. Let a new narrative form. You can be any character you want. You can be the villain. That's the fire alarm. You can be the villain. You can be the hero. You can be a different kind of hero, an anti-hero. You can be anything you want. Yeah, I completely lost my train of thought. That's fine. I think I was just saying, like, episode 5, I was inspired, I think, by it, or it came to mind. And that maybe, when you work on yourself and when you work on, I want to like rely more on my own internal space to handle the negative things in my life, especially negative emotions, negative thoughts. Maybe that has a sort of positive reflection on how you come out into the world as a more free-flowing agent. I think there was also a kind of a connection to another episode. Let's see here. So I've done morning anxiety. I've done the replay game and wish list thinking. And this is a discussion about inner child, taking a step back from the narrative. I've done fear in the body as well, perceiving fear in the body. Suffice to say, I feel I might have mentioned before, and I'm the reason I'm trying to make connections between episodes is because I'm trying to see if more consistently reflecting on certain thoughts, certain events, certain experiences creates a more solid, I don't know what we can call it, understanding or perspective, because I'm able to make connections between ideas I just wasn't able to before, simply for the reason that they are there, that there is this clear, well thought out thing called episode 2 that not only have I been through, but also that I can tap into at any moment. And then not only that, I can also make a connection between episode 2 and episode 6, and that forms a new idea. So yeah, I would just say that I recall mentioning before that there was an importance to certain narratives existing in our life, perhaps a vitality to that, but also that we need to kind of be willing sometimes to take a step back from a narrative that might not be serving us, reassess, find something that isn't working in that narrative, take a close look at it, see what else can be done instead of it, or what thing it's pointing to that needs to be changed or addressed, and try something new the next time this narrative presents itself in normal life, in everyday life. And what I find from making this connection is that sort of tracks, that sort of resonates. And specifically what it says is an inner child isn't maybe what we would more classically picture it as, a kid in our soul, that we tap into sometimes. I think that's somewhat true, but I think it doesn't capture the kernel or the seed at the center of why that's true and why that's important. I think that kids, kids are naturally great at play, not playing games, the deeper meaning of play, as in they can look at the world without labels and come in with the spirit of, I want to enjoy this situation, I want to make the most out of it. It might sound silly to say that the kernel or the true thing at the center of what an inner child actually seems to be is play, because we associate play with video games, with dolls and action figures. But it seems to me, and perhaps to other intellectuals or thinkers that I've heard speak on this, it seems to be pointing to something true about the world that we live in, the reality that we live in, which is that we have a tendency, when not mindful, to get stuck in certain patterns. Some of those patterns even might be called personalities. Now that's quite controversial. I don't want to go into that. I'm just spitballing here to a certain extent. But some of these thinkers do basically theorize or suggest that even a personality, to a certain extent, is a narrative that you can unravel, you can reshape. Maybe not as quick as the one I've shared today, as in, I noticed that I'm more playful today, even though there's someone attractive, and that usually makes me as a certain character in a certain narrative freak out. That's all going to drop, and I'm suddenly going to become fun and playful and confident. I'm not suggesting personalities change that fast, but that there is this tendency, whether big or small, for us to be stuck in patterns. And that inner child isn't just the spirit of having fun for fun's sake and letting that die and for, just for a few moments and then, okay, back to work tomorrow. No, I think it's how can we get into contact with the thing, the agent that actually allows us, if we wish to, of course, to take any narrative and challenge it. And that really, for me, what seems to be the tool that we use is the inner child, is the spirit of play. Playing not just a simple game, playing the game of life, playing a beautiful game that is of the nature of music, of the nature of patterns that flow. If you really think about music, that is what it is. It's a pattern that changes itself, and that captures inner child. And also the story that I've experienced captures inner child. I hope this ramble about inner child provokes some thought about you in your life, you in your days and weeks and months as a character in certain narratives that you might wish to challenge. And I hope that it makes a connection between a possible actual tool and the issue or point or moment in your life you'd like to challenge and learn from and grow from. I would encourage you, after listening to this, to be open to stopping and taking a step back when you find yourself in a new situation and seeing yourself in it as a character in a narrative with obstacles and antagonists. Who are you? Why are you that way? Might be interesting to think about. What is the obstacle? Who is the antagonist? The antagonist might seem like something positive, like an attractive girl or someone attractive, but actually they might be the ones triggering the negative emotions. So in that case, they are the antagonists. They're triggering the internal resistance. So take a step back from that, ask these questions, then inquire, who might you like to be in this narrative? Or what new shape might you like this narrative to take? And just explore. I mean, I can't possibly help at this stage take you farther than that, because already that is quite an endeavor. But don't underestimate the power of awareness and questioning and the creativity associated with creating like a new vision for yourself of how you might like to see that narrative. It is how I lost now 12 kilos. It was by creating a new narrative for myself, a vision for the future, a narrative about what is food in my life, a new narrative about that. Just started from awareness, questioning, and new visions. So start small, because that's really how big change can happen. All right, see you next time.